Yeah, welcome to this webinar on postgraduate personal statements. Now, this is really exciting because we have all of these amazing panelists here with us. Oh, I see Nina's just joined as well. Hello, Nina. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So we're going to be talking about the personal statements, and Finn and I are hosting, and we have these wonderful panelists, Nina, Rebecca, and Suthita. So I'm going to say a little bit first about the structure of the webinar, and then we can get into it a little bit more. Next slide. Thanks. Okay, yeah, so as I said, we'll do the introductions, then we'll go into top 5 tips for a great personal statement. And then our wonderful panelists are going to talk a little bit about their own personal experiences with personal statements. And then we'll have kind of like the main section of the webinar, which is a Q&A, where any attendants can ask all your questions on here. So that would be great. Okay, next slide. Okay, so quickly, just a bit about Project Access. This is an international nonprofit organization set up to provide new opportunities for students from disadvantaged backgrounds or untraditional backgrounds. It pairs people with personal mentors. So it's got this mentoring element one-to-one. But then we also have a knowledge base, which is the Access Academy, where you can find all this information on anything from applying to university, going to university. It's got all this information and loads of webinars. And this is another great webinar. And Finn is the head of the postgraduate program. So Finn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hi, my name is Finn. I am, as Asha already mentioned, the product director of the graduate program. So everything that's linked to graduates is my thing here at Project Access. About my background, I did my master's in global management at LSE and also successfully applied at other universities in the UK and Bocconi. So I guess I kind of know what I'm talking about when it comes to personal statements.
Great. Okay, next slide, and we can introduce everyone. Okay, Rebecca, would you like to take it away?
Just unmute myself. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca, and I'm originally from Italy. I've been the operations manager for the Italian team for 2 years now here at Project Access, and I recently also stepped up as a country coordination director. Regarding my background, I graduated with a BA in philosophy, politics, and economics from KCL last year, well, 2020, magic year. And then I moved on to doing my master's here at the University of Edinburgh in environmental development. And yeah, this last bit that you can see here on the slide was just like a joke that was started by Suthita. She said that she really loves purple. Then Nina apparently doesn't like purple. I generally don't really have strong opinions about purple. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, thank you. Nina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Nina. I'm originally from Denmark, and now I study at Oxford. I did my bachelor's degree at Columbia University in New York. And I've been part of PA for a really long time, I think almost since the beginning. So I've been a mentor for many, many years and have also helped start up Project Access in the US. And last year I headed up all the campus teams. So a long history with Project Access, and I think it's a great organization. Yeah, I think that's it.
Great, thank you so much. Suthita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hi, I'm Suthita. I'm from Thailand. So I'm a really new to Project Access. I just joined last October, but I've had amazing experiences. So right now I'm studying my master's at UCL, and I really like traveling. So I see myself as a global citizen in the making. And yeah, continuing that joke, I really love purple.
Wow, okay. Thank you so much for introducing yourself, guys. It's so exciting to have you all here. Okay, I guess we'll get on to our top tips to start off. Does anyone want to start with the first tip that they had? Did anyone? I can't remember who came up with this one, but it's definitely a good one.
I had that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I think for me, when Asha asked me like, what's your number one like key tip, I would say like show your thought process. So like, why does it make sense for you at that specific point in time to go and study that course at that university, which might be like quite different from what you did before. You might have like worked in between your bachelor's and your master's. So you sort of have to show to the admissions officers like why now and why that specific course. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's really important to be specific and really show why you're passionate about that specific thing. Yeah, great. Did anyone have this next one? I can't remember. Maybe this was Sarah's, but
Yeah, mine's kind of on the second and third ones. So, I mean, my main tip would be you need to show that you are all-rounded person. So even though it's really important that you show your academic background, your skills and all that, but essentially you should have a social life outside of class. So when writing your VS statement, it's important to show, what kind of activities you're involved in, to show how do you actually, take your education beyond the classroom. And that sort of links to the third point, showing that you have transferable skills. Now you are able to bridge together skills and experiences, knowledge from all the different experiences, and apply to the program that you want to study at.
Great. So definitely my top tip is the fourth one here. It's flow and coherence. It's really important that in your personal statement that it sounds like it's one statement and not just answering all these questions that you have been asked by the university at like in different parts. Make really sure that everything links together and sounds, as I already mentioned, as if it's one piece and everything has to, like, also when it comes to the story, is linked together.
Yeah, so my top advice would be to really be aware of the structure. I don't know, did we keep the slide?
Yeah, it's the next one. You can go to the next slide.
Yeah. So I think it's connected to what Finn said about like having like coherence. So being able to tell a story, and in order to do that, it's important that you create like a good structure for yourself. And there are many different ways to structure, but I've just given like one example here in like how to structure. So I call this like a hook or like a teaser. So like you open up with sort of like your introduction to like maybe like a good story of like why you got interested in the subject or the specific university. So for me, like I studied criminology and I had an experience being a witness once like 5 years ago. So that sort of like led me into talking about how I got interested in the subject. And then I started in the body, like talking about my educational experience, relating to the subject that I wanted to study, different questions that I had about like research I was interested in, career aspirations. And then at the end, you can sort of like tie. And I think like with the why this university, why this course, you can sort of tie in throughout, but you can also keep it to the end. So it's sort of like you told your whole story, and now like why at this specific moment, as Rebecca mentioned, like, are you interested in this course and where is it going to take you? But like different ways to structure it, but I personally like this approach.
Great, thank you so much for sharing that. That's actually so useful. Yeah, but now we can go on to your personal experiences and tell us a little bit more about how you got to writing your personal statement and everything within it. Nina, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I guess I'll start. I think these different memes like explain my story pretty well. I wasn't very I wasn't very planned with my graduate school applications. I decided, I think late December, that I wanted to apply to Oxford in the January, like for the January deadline. And it was sort of like my senior year. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I'd found this like one course and did a thesis in the area of like criminology that I thought was really interesting. So it's sort of like, oh, I don't know what I want to do for work. Maybe I should just apply to graduate school. And that was kind of how it started. And then I thought, oh, I'm going to apply to all these graduate school programs, and then ended up only settling on the Oxford and the Cambridge one. And then started my writing my personal statement. And like, I wouldn't, if you can avoid it, like I wouldn't necessarily recommend this approach. Try to be, I think Rebecca will maybe talk more about being more structured about how to go about it, choosing the universities. But I had sort of just found one that I thought was really interesting, and I found a professor that I really wanted to work with. So when I started crafting my personal statement, I sort of started researching more about the program, about the professors, what work they were doing, and I weaved that into my personal statement. So I said a little bit about this before, but like I used sort of like my experience being a witness in a court, and then took it from there and sort of like said, oh, like this was my first experience with law or criminology. And then I talked about how I had done my like thesis in the area, how I worked as a court watcher in Manhattan, and a bunch of other things that I'd done during my undergrad, and then what I wanted to use the degree for. So the personal statement for me was not super hard to craft, but I think for some people it might take a little bit more of like a longer brainstorm to figure out why exactly you want to study that. I felt like with my background, it was easy for me to craft and like a good why I want to study what I'm applying to. So yeah, I applied to Oxford and I got a response within, I think, like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I decided like not to apply to Cambridge because Oxford was my first choice. And again, I would not recommend this. Like, apply to a couple of schools, even if you get accepted, because you can sometimes use it as a leverage to like get more scholarship money, or just to like maybe the other universities are prepared to give you something that the other one isn't. So I made stupid mistakes, and don't do that. But yeah, I was excited. I got accepted and I started, and it was difficult, as you can see on the last image. That was me. I thought it was free, but I was not.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And it's interesting to hear about how you use those experiences that you had during your undergrad and kind of like use them to take over to your personal statement and craft this idea of why you actually wanted to study that. And yeah, that's great to hear about how you got in and everything. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions about this at the end, but thank you so much, Nina. I guess we can go on to the next person.
So, my experience took a way longer process than Nina's. Actually, I graduated in 2019, but I'd actually started, searching, finding out about grad school abroad in my third year. So it took me a whole year to sort of decide on where I wanted to be. And I procrastinated a lot over that whole entire year. So I was, I started by asking around so my classmates, my teachers, like who wants to study a master's abroad, and so we could share some experiences or application tips. Then I realized no one wanted to do so. So I felt really alone, lost, desperate, and alone in this journey, which also, in hindsight, a mentor would be great. Hint, hint. So I actually took a few months where I put away and I all this application stuff, I did not want to touch it because I was so confused how to actually start writing my personal statement. And for me, because I'm based in Thailand, I did my undergraduate in Thailand, the studying abroad, especially in the UK, it seemed like a really scary thing. So, but in the end, while I researched more university websites, I really found a program that I'm passionate in. Yeah, I am. So that was my main motivation. That there was a little voice inside my head that went, Satita, you want to study this program, you're gonna sit down, you're gonna work on the keyboard, and you're gonna type out a personal statement. So I did. And when I typed out my first draft, it was horrendous. I went back and there was so much that I was trying to put into it. So it was just really dense and overloaded with information. Then I actually went back to doing research about how to actually write an effective PS. So if you look at the purple mass in the middle, that is pretty much what my research process was like. I was reading all those tips, all those PDFs from all those different universities and blogs about people's experiences. And I don't really know if I actually got a clearer idea of what should go into the PS, but then I had sort of the idea of how I could translate my own experiences, my educational journey, my experiences from outside the classroom into a PS that means me. So then I sat myself down again and wrote my second draft, my third draft. I went up to 12 drafts. Then I submitted it before the deadline. So, and for international students, our deadline is even earlier. So that's something I'm proud of myself for. And then it actually took 14 weeks to hear back. And so when I got the admission letter, it was actually in late March/early April. So the entire process has just been a cycle of self-doubt, of thinking that maybe I've got a better hang of this, and then realizing that no, I actually don't know what I'm doing, and then just repeating that process over and over until I'm happy with something that represents who I am, what I want to study, and what this degree would mean to me. So yeah, just start. It's okay to make mistakes because you need to try and see what works for you, what doesn't work. And it's really great to have someone who can read your personal statement, kind of point to some things that you might have missed out, and believe in yourself. So yeah.
That's such a great story. Thank you so much. And I love how you continue to draft and redraft different sections. When you were doing that, did you start from scratch every time, or was it a case of like incorporating different parts from different drafts and so on?
I kind of did both, but I really separated each part of my PS into a different file. So it was really broken down. And then when I had a better idea of what I wanted to do, I would just pick out more relevant parts and construct another PS.
Oh, wow. So it's very much a slow process of cutting and pasting and finding out what worked for you. That's so interesting. Wow. Okay. Okay, we can move on now to Rebecca's experience.
So yeah, thanks guys for your stories. Are super inspiring. But I guess my experience is somewhat in between Nina and Satita. Like I was a bit earlier than Nina, but still I was nowhere like near Satita's organization. I started around so the first term of my last year of undergrad. I started doing some research. I was highly uncertain of what I wanted to get into, but I think it was a bit easier for me to actually apply for postgrad rather than undergrad, because I kind of during the years I kind of developed stronger interest in a field, whereas when I applied for undergrad it was a bit like not random, because it wasn't random, but it was a bit more of like a jump in the darkness. So I knew that I wanted to do something around environment, but I didn't really know of what specifically, and I needed to find like a more specific focus. And yeah, there's this sentence there, which I think is something that really helped me. It's basically like, what's something that I would want to read about in my free time? Because that's like when you do your undergrad, I feel like it's broader. So there's loads of maybe modules that, yeah, you have to do and you do it, but it's not, I wouldn't particularly want to read about quantitative methods in my free time, you know what I mean? But if you find something more specific that really, really interests you, I think it's going to be that spark that makes the difference in that postgraduate statement. For me, it was also very important to consider where I wanted to be geographically. Of course, like it kind of matters a bit less nowadays, but I didn't know that at the time. So I looked into different unis which offered programs around the field that I wanted to be in. And in the end, I narrowed it down to, actually here I wrote 3, but I forgot about 1. So I applied to Oxford, Edinburgh, and then Copenhagen in Denmark, and 1 university in Italy as well, which was a bit more specific. Like all the other 3 courses were environment and development. This one was in like food security. But yeah, so I applied to 4. I ended up getting the Italian one and Edinburgh. And I just decided to go for Edinburgh. But in the meantime, the writing process was, the tricky part is that they were all quite different styles that I had to sort of be like adapt to. The Oxford and the Edinburgh ones were the most similar, but still Edinburgh was, I think, half the word count of Oxford's. So I definitely needed to start from scratch. And I wouldn't probably recommend that. I agree with Nina when she said like to apply to more than 1, but maybe choose universities that have like a more similar process. I went through a couple of drafts, definitely not 12. And again, like super important, the proofreading that I had from my friends, they were very critical and I really appreciated that. Yeah, send them in, as I said. When I graduated, I was ready to move on for this adventure, and everything turned out all right, even though at one point it was uncertainty and it was fear that I wouldn't get into any of them. But yeah, I'm happy here.
That's so great. And also that's a point that you mentioned that I don't think anyone has mentioned so far, like getting other people to read it. Did you find that like quite an important step, handing it over to your friends and family and getting advice from them?
Yeah, I think for me it was really important, because I feel like when you write something and you're really like, you know, into it, like even with essays, you just don't see the problems anymore. It just it doesn't really have that meaning. Whereas when someone has like a fresh perspective on it, they can definitely spot things that you can't anymore.
Great. Thank you so much for talking about your experiences, guys. I myself had also very, very similar experiences. I'm not going to go into detail. I just really want you to get from these overviews that there is really not one way of experiences when it comes to writing a personal statement. Some of your friends might find it more easily when they're also applying for grad school to write the personal statement. So really don't get disconfronted by other people's experiences. And also the second thing that I really want you to get here from this one is that it just takes time. Really do your research, rewrite it. It's not going to work, but from within 1 week, I'd even say. It just takes time, and you won't get it right on your first try. So really, don't freak out over it. It's just a personal statement. So enjoy it, I guess, the process of writing. And yeah, that's it on that side. Your Wi-Fi broke?
Yeah, sorry, my Wi-Fi is being a little slow. Sorry if I cut out a little bit. Yeah, that's really helpful though. Yeah, is it okay? Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, if you want to say a little bit more about your experience, Finn, that would be great. If not, we could go on to the questions. I
Yeah,
don't mind.
I can if you like. I kind of knew what I wanted to study from the beginning, so I did management, which is also obviously very broad. But it also took me quite a long time to write my personal statement. I think I started writing in November of the previous year, and I think it overall took me 3 months to write something that I actually liked. I also started really researching of what makes this course special and such, and obviously then I started writing at some point, and then obviously didn't like it, so I had to get my head free, just like taking off for 2 weeks, not even looking at my personal statements, and yeah, then kind of coming back with fresh eyes, rewriting it again, then giving it to my dad, who then completely destroyed it, and kind of rewriting it from the beginning again, and yeah, that kind of kept on for 3 months, but afterwards I definitely wrote something that I liked and was happy to hand in.
That's great. I feel like giving it to your parents is always a risk there, because you're like, are they going to tear it to pieces? Are they going to give you good advice? You never know.
That's when you have parents that don't speak English and you can't do that.
That's also good tip. Yeah, so we have a couple of questions in the chat box. By the way, anyone who's listening, feel free to drop anything in there. Like, doesn't need to be any well-formulated question or anything. Any question is a good question. But I guess we can start with this first one, which I don't mind, anyone can answer this. Someone has asked, what are the main differences between an undergraduate and a postgraduate personal statement? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on this. It's a really good question.
There's also a big difference between undergraduate personal statements for like the UK, the US, or like around Europe. So I can sort of maybe take the US one. So, because if you're applying for an undergraduate in the US, you usually have a prompt, like 7 different prompts that you can answer to, and it's much more geared towards like telling a personal like story, or like just writing a really interesting story that's not necessarily like broadly focused on your background or your interest. So for a postgraduate personal statement, you need to be much more specific. Like they're basically asking you like about your educational, academic, work experience, background, and how that has led you to apply to that specific course and university. But I'm sure that Rebecca, for example, can talk about how to like apply for undergrad in the UK, because I think they're maybe a little bit more closely connected than the US undergrad personal statement is.
Yeah, I definitely think like it's more undergraduate in the UK. It's more like academically focused than the US. Like from what I've been told, I didn't apply to the US, but it seems to be a bit more like storytelling when you apply to the US. But the difference between undergraduate and postgraduate in the UK, I would say, since like for undergrad you write one and you apply to different, like up to 5 different universities, and it could be even like different courses. It's a bit less like it doesn't require as much research into the course and the university. It's a bit more about the subject in itself rather than the specific course and the specific uni.
Yeah, I'd add to that, saying that that the postgraduate personal statement is much more focused, or much more detailed even than the undergrad one. You have to do much more research on exactly that course, because as Rebecca mentioned, you don't have UCAS, so the tool that you hand in your undergrad application through for postgraduates. So you really have to, first of all, write multiple personal statements if you want to apply to different universities and different programs, and really have to focus on why this specific course, why this university. So the research and all everything that goes into has to be much clearer for the admission office to understand why you're actually applying, not only for this subject area, but also for this specific program.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, guys. I think that was a really good answer encompassing a lot of different areas. Yeah, I think specificity is definitely a really important point, and just getting across your passion for the course and showing you've actually done the research is really important. Great. Okay, so another question we have, this is quite a long one, but I can read it out if that's okay for everyone. So Jasmine has said, I am interested in studying public health policy at LSE because I've always been interested in the health sciences. I'm currently studying political science now. I don't really have many extracurriculars because I work most of the time, part-time work unrelated to the course. I'm a bit unsure how to link how I spend most of my downtime with why I want to study public health policy. Should I be looking for more experiences that will link better? And she said she's graduating at the end of the year. So yeah, has anyone got a bit of advice to Jasmine about this question? If you want to just skim over it again, it's in the Q&A box.
I mean, I don't really, like, I feel like I should know more about you to answer this, but I guess, like, if you develop this passion for public health policy, like, do you read in your free time about it? Do you, like, I don't know, you've maybe like written a blog about it, even if it's not something like a huge experience, but like how, like, why did you get interested in this? There must be some sort of hook that you can sort of link onto.
Yeah, okay, very important, writing your thesis about it. Like you just said that in the chat. So for example, I wrote my thesis within like law and criminology, and that was really what like sparked my interest in going to graduate school in that area. So very important to mention that and sort of like explain how that ties to the grad program. I'd also echo what Rebecca says, like if you're in your downtime, like reading about it, it could also be like talking about what courses you've taken that's really like interested you and how you see applying that to graduate school or your future. I'm also sure that you do something in your spare time that you can tie to it. It can also use, like, you can also use your personal like background. So a lot of people who go into like health sciences or like medicine have some sort of personal story. I think it's perfectly fine to use that. I think for the UK, they really like to focus on academics and more like, I want to call it like hard versus soft. So they're more geared towards like the hard stuff, whereas in the US, if you want to apply to the US, like they're much more open for you to like use personal stories as well. But even for a UK personal statement, I would say that's fine as well. Just maybe in smaller doses. So for me, like it worked to say I have a personal experience of being a witness in a trial, but I didn't spend my entire personal statement talking about that. It was just like a hook. So I'm sure you have something similar.
Yeah, I completely agree with Rebecca and Nina on that. I do not think that you need more experience in that area to actually bring over why you're interested in studying that. Instead, you can use your work experience of what you do, so everything that you do in your downtime, more of a way of showing what kind of skills you have learned, because it's also a very famous questions that you have to, I guess, always have to answer in personal statements. So go more into detail when you talk about your downtime, so your work, and what kind of skills you learned, and how these skills link to your overall experiences that you can use in your future and also can be applied in your studies.
Yeah, I also agree with the focus on the undergraduate thesis. I also wrote my undergraduate dissertation on development issues in South America, and now I'm studying environment and development. So it's basically showing that from a broader course that you might have studied in your undergrad, that's sort of like what you decide to focus on. And you mentioned like that you do a bit of research assistant work. That's definitely something that's going to be very, very valuable, like especially in the UK. I don't really know about the US, but I think it's really relevant.
Great. Yeah, I think that's so, oh, she said thank you. That's so helpful, guys. Thank you very much for answering that. We've got another one here.
Oh, can I just interject for a second?
Of course. Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure I know someone really well who studies public health policy at LSE this year. So if you want to be connected, you can email me and I can try to see if he'd be willing to speak with you about it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Nina. Another question Jasmine asked is, should I include my personal background in my personal statement? I'm a first generation university student. Is this something that would matter to the university, or is it something you guys think would be valuable to highlight in that sense, or is it kind of more anonymously marked?
I think it's definitely something you should not necessarily highlight but mention. Personal statements are a great way for the admission office to get to know you in much more detail than they can through your CV or all the other things that you have to hand in. So yes, they really want to know everything about you. So definitely include it.
I'd say like be careful sometimes, like don't share everything. I think especially, when you're going into like, being a first gen university student. So I'm also first gen. I didn't personally mention it in my UK application, but I definitely would have if I had applied to the US. So I think it's more about finding the appropriate place to put it. Also, sometimes like if you don't feel like it fits in your personal statement per se, like there will be an opportunity somewhere in the application to say something extra. And that could maybe for you be like, because I'm first generation or low income, I've had these struggles throughout university, or that's why I work part-time in a job that isn't related to my studies. In the US, diversity statements are usually where you would put this. So the university asks like if there's something specific to your background or like you personally that you think is important for them to know. And this is where you would usually include something like that. But I agree with it. Like it's about getting to know you. I would just be careful about not overdoing it and finding the appropriate place to put it, because they're looking for your academic abilities.
One suggestion I could make is use that to your advantage. So really, apart from finding the right place to put it in, for example, there are certain courses or programs that might benefit from a student having a different background, because that brings a different perspective. So use that as a leverage point to express how with your particular background you bring a different set of perspectives and how you experience or interact with the program, the modules, and the university experience. That could also help you with your application.
Yeah, great. I think that's really important to highlight what skills you specifically have, and using your background to do that. It sounds like you've got a lot of skills with your part-time work and everything. So I think that's definitely a good idea. Thank you, guys. So the next question we have is how far the reputation of your undergraduate university matters for graduate admissions. Does anyone have any advice or thoughts on this? Is that an important factor that graduate admissions take into account?
From my personal experiences, probably not, because my undergrad, it's pretty much unknown to the rest of the world. But it's really how you can relate what you learned in your undergrad experience to that particular program that you want to study at. So another tip there would be to really go into the specific modules. Tell them that you're interested in the program and in these modules and how your previous academic or extracurricular experiences relate to those. So it's really not about, how good the ranking of your undergrad school is, but what you learned as a person and how and what skills and experiences you can bring to the postgrad program.
I made the same experience. I know, first of all, also my undergrad was also, I guess, not very known in the UK. And I have lots of friends who also came from universities that no one has ever heard of, and still they made it all to LSE and other great universities. So as Sathida said, there are much more important things that the admission office looks out for. So I wouldn't worry.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys. I guess like Nina, from the perspective of like Oxford, what would do you have any, do you think they take it into account much, or is it similar?
I think it's hard to answer because there's a lot of biases in it. Like, I do think that they consider it, but I think it's just, if you come from one of those universities, maybe your courses have been more rigorous at some other universities and they take that into account. But it's just like, when I look at, for example, the people in my course, there was an overwhelming amount of people that came from very high ranking undergraduate institutions. But it could also be that those people are just much more exposed to like graduate school and top ranking graduate schools as well. So more people from those schools apply. I wouldn't worry about being from an unknown or lesser ranked school at all. Like, you're only going to get accepted if you apply. So like, let's not make that stop us. So just because there might be more people from more like, or higher ranked or well-known schools, like I definitely saw a lot of people from other schools, and they were equally as talented, smart, and ambitious.
Yeah, great. That's so true. And it's kind of, as Suthira highlighted earlier, like you can use those experiences that you've had specifically and the specific courses you've had to highlight how you bring a different perspective and everything. Great. If anyone has anything else to say on that, we can do that. Or I think that's all of the questions we have at the moment. But do any of the panelists like have questions for each other, or anything else they want to impart their wisdom into?
I have one thing. I think I see this with like undergrad admissions as well. Like, really be careful about how many universities you decide to apply to. Don't do what I did and just apply to one unless like that's your top choice, like me, and you don't see like getting anything out of applying to multiple. But especially if you're thinking about applying both to universities in the US, the UK, Europe, Asia, whatever it might be, they have very different application processes, and that can take a really long time. So if you're dead set on applying to many, many different schools, start early, because that's going to be a lot of work.
Exactly. So on the other side, but don't apply to too many grad programs, because for what Nina already says, it takes a long time. And when you don't have the time to invest, or I don't know, the time that you actually to actually write something good, then really focus on which programs you apply to. Because in the end, you will have to write a personal statement for each of those, and to make sure that all of them are very, very high quality. You will have to spend a lot of energy, a lot of time into writing these. So when you don't have the time, focus your energy. This is, I guess, my tip on that.
Great, thank you so much. That's really useful. Yeah, I think being specific like that, as we've kind of highlighted, and trying to figure out really what it is you want out of this course and why you really want to attend this university is really important. Great, so
I have one more thing I can
go ahead.
I think it always looks really well on your personal statement when you've done very specific research into your program. So understanding what kind of opportunities that they give you, understanding or like looking into what courses do they offer, what courses would you be interested in and why, what do the professors at that department or university like produce a research that you could be interested in joining. For example, when I applied to criminology, I found that there was like a center for wrongful convictions, which is what I wrote my thesis on, and I was like, perfect. So it was much easier to sort of find a reason why I needed to be there specifically and not in like other places. And I think that the grad schools really like that because they see that you've actually done your research and know why you want to go there.
Yeah, for sure. And that's really important. And also I kind of wanted to ask, like, if you could all go back and do something different with the whole process of writing your personal statement, how would you approach it differently, or would you just do it the same? Would you still write all those personal statements and everything? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think I would do it a bit differently. I think I would focus much more in the beginning of actually doing my research and not just start writing right away with ideas that I had in my mind. So kind of before you even think of structure and anything like that and what to or like how to write it, really focus on the research. I think this is the most important part of it all. Understanding what this program has to offer, what this university has to offer, and why I am a good fit for that, and how it aligns with my career goals and so and whatever. So yeah, much broader, like better focus on the very first step, doing your research.
For me, I would have really wished that I had asked more people to find a potential mentor or someone who also wants to apply to a graduate program. Because I remember feeling how alone and confused I was about the whole entire process. So if I could turn back time, I would have definitely reached out to more teachers or someone who has been through some sort of similar experience so they could actually point me not entirely the right way, but a more streamlined way of how I approach my application.
Honestly, that's such a good piece of advice, because sometimes it's like all you need is someone to kind of just talk through your thoughts with, and then that can help so much. And yeah, you're never in something alone. There's always people going through the same thing when you're applying to postgrad, or any degree. So that's a really good point, Suthida. Thank you. Do Rebecca or Nina have any thoughts on this? Or maybe you already went through it in your slides, but that's totally fine if not.
Yeah, I don't think I really regret anything. I think I was especially because I'd been a part of Project Access for such a long time, I already had a very big network of people. I already knew people at Oxford that I could ask to see their personal statement, because I didn't know really what I was doing, but like I think more than someone who doesn't know a lot of people around the world and already has the network that Project Access gives you. I can't really go back and say that I regret anything. It's like, yes, should I have started earlier? Definitely. But I didn't decide until very late that I wanted to apply. So if you're at a point where you're considering it, I would maybe just start anyways. And then if you suddenly figure out that that's not for you, then I don't think that you've wasted your time. But yeah, I don't think I regret anything.
Yeah, I'm kind of with Nina on this. I feel like I already mentioned this, but it was so much easier for me to do this rather than my undergrad, just because I was already in the UK environment. I knew how like UK universities worked, and I knew loads of people around. So actually, for me, it was harder to apply, for example, to Copenhagen because I had no idea of like what the process was. And I asked some people that were Danish and knew a bit about it, but it didn't really. That probably I should have put more work in, because yeah, it didn't really work out because I didn't really know what I was doing. They were asking loads of specific things about my courses, like they wanted to see like all the lists of the reading lists, and I was like, I don't know what to do here. So yeah, I probably should have put more thought into it if I really wanted it, but maybe I subconsciously knew that I just wanted to stay in the UK.
Yeah, thank you.
Talking
ahead.
about the network, I think surely it's really easy if you already know someone who, I don't know, applied to this university or like overall is in the same process as you. But if you don't have that, I guess a very important tip here, really don't be shy. Just I don't know, reach out to the university directly, or just really stalk people who do this exact program on LinkedIn or whatever kind of network. Facebook really doesn't matter. I don't know. I never did that. I kind of thought, okay, these people are certainly don't want to help me or whatever. I don't remember. But looking back now, I have actually people reaching out to me through these networks, and I still am always happy to talk about my experiences, what I wrote in my personal statement and that kind of thing. So really just reach out, don't be shy, and I'm sure you'll find someone who did the exact same thing that you want to do. So just do it.
I'll echo that. I reached out to some people on LinkedIn, and I have people reach out to me now, and I'm always super happy to help. People love talking about what they do and themselves. So definitely.
Yeah, same. I also harassed loads of people in my course here at Edinburgh before.
Great. Yeah, use your network, trust the process. These are great pieces of advice. Love it. And yeah, just like have confidence in yourself. Like you've come this far, you have all of these skills, and use that. So yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, guys, for answering all of these questions. Does anyone have any parting thoughts? If not, we can finish up here. I don't think so. Okay, I'll stop the recording here. Okay, thank you guys so much for coming along. It's great to hear from all of you. Yeah, this will be available recorded, and it'll also be on YouTube, so you can always catch up afterwards if you missed something or want to go back to anything if you're listening. But yeah, thank you so much to all the wonderful panelists, and yeah, good luck with your personal statements, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. And good luck.
Good luck.
Great.